Hello everyone. My name is Itai Cohen. I'm a product manager in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. In this session, I'll provide an overview of our SaaS security posture management solution, focusing on reducing exposure to organizational critical assets. The primary goal of this session is educational, and it will equip you with practical tools to improve your SaaS posture. So let's begin. The agenda for today, I'll start with a quick introduction to what is SSPM, SaaS Security Posture Management, how does it work, and why is it so important. I know the audience here is fairly technical, so this will be a quick introduction, and then we'll move into the SaaS initiative demo, which our homepage for classic posture management, including all the SaaS security posture recommendations. I will guide you how we should use that and what's the advantages of it being part of the exposure management platform. Then we will move to a concept. We will move to a new concept, moving from classic posture management to exposure reduction which is focused on reducing the exposures to your crown jewels, to the critical assets of an organization. And for that, I'll provide a demo on the attack path experience, which is a public preview feature we lately announced in Microsoft Secure. And that's about it. So I'm going to start with what is posture management. To start, I want to first start with an analogy of a house and basically provide an information of what is house posture management, I would say. So when having a house, the first things that you wish to do is setting up your house such that it will be more difficult for a burglar to break into the house. Things like this include buying strong windows, making sure the windows are closed, making sure the windows are locked, making sure your front door is locked and is a proper door and you have proper locks, and even every room within your house better be closed or locked, especially the rooms which include the most sensitive parts of your house. So this is house posture management. You're trying to configure so-called the house as good as possible in order to make it harder for a burglar to break into it. What is SaaS security posture management? Is doing similar things to make it harder for an attacker to break into your SaaS environment. So, for example, enforcing strong password when logging into Salesforce is an example of good posture recommendation in order to make it harder to log in or to break in to Salesforce. And a side note, when I say break into Salesforce, I don't mean breaking into the actual application called Salesforce, because this is not our goal here. We are not protecting Salesforce as the app or any other SaaS vendor. We are protecting the interactions between the organization to the business critical applications. So if a user logs in to Salesforce, for example, with his personal credentials, this is not something we protect. We care about if a user logs in with his organizational credential into Salesforce, and therefore this user has visibility into all the organizational data within Salesforce. So these are the type of interaction we cover with SaaS security posture management. And another example that I have here on the screen is enforce multi-factor authentication on all admin. This is actually a very important SaaS security recommendation, as I will soon cover it as well, but it has high correlation to real attacks. And now I wish to dive into the how SSPM with a quick example, just to give you a notion of understanding into how the SaaS security posture management product works. So we have few recommendations. This is just an example. We have many recommendations. This is just an example of a single recommendation, which recommend to ensure multi-factor authentication is enabled for all users in administrative roles. Each recommendation has a status, whether it's compliant or non-compliant, whether it's red or green. and the impact, how important it is. And then you have the description for the recommendation, what does it mean, and each recommendation is also equipped with remediation steps of what do we expect you to do in order to change the status from non-compliant to compliant. If you follow these steps, for this example, go to Microsoft 365 Admin Center and properly configure multi-factor authentication for administrative roles, this will turn to green and this recommendation will turn to compliant after a few hours. And every few hours, we keep checking that the state still applicable in order to make sure we always present to you the most accurate reflection of your posture situation. And now I wish to double click on why SSPM is so important. So I wish to start with why protecting your SaaS business critical application is so important. And the concept is that you should think of your SaaS apps as your assets, as the organizational assets. Same as you protect your devices or so on, you should protect your SaaS applications. These business critical SaaS applications, such as Microsoft Teams, Exchange Online, Salesforce, or whatever you use to run your business, these SaaS applications have the most sensitive data of an organization, sometimes on the customers of the organization and so on. And you wish to make sure nobody breaks in or log in into this application. And I wish to quote sentence from Gartner latest strategic roadmap, where they claim that SaaS is an ever-increasing part of most organizations' application ecosystems, yet its security is often overlooked, misunderstood, or just assumed to be good enough. And therefore, I mentioned this key point. This is my first bullet into why you should use SSPM and in general protect your SaaS environment. Next, we understand that misconfigurations are top risks. We see very high correlation, some mixed percentage, but very high percentages of attacks that could be prevented just by setting those configurations properly. Even more accurate than that, just by properly setting single sign-on SSO and multi-factor authentication MFA to these applications, our research team sees that this is the root cause for most of the recent attacks on SaaS applications. And one more thing that I want to stress: attackers don't break into the SaaS app; they log in to the SaaS application. So attacker can break into a user and then just log in as this user into the organizational SaaS applications. So those misconfigurations are between the interactions, from user to SaaS interactions or non-human identity to SaaS interactions, which leads me to the third bullet into why SSPM is so important. And it's the fact that AI and non-human identity interaction just adds a huge amount of complexities. So now Gen AI applications can interact with your SaaS environment and via oAuth protocols or via agents and so on. And this and also AI by itself is a SaaS application sometimes. So just to use the example that I provided before regarding setting up multi-factor authentication on administrative roles, just by doing that, which is a general recommendation to protect your SaaS environment, this also protects your Copilot, for example, if it's properly configured with single sign-on via Entra ID. So just by following this type of recommendation, you basically protect the interactions with Copilot. So this is it for the quick introduction that I promised to provide on the SSPM. And now I will jump into the SaaS initiative demo. So the SaaS so under the exposure management platform, we have the concept of initiatives. And I want to take a step back. For those of you who are familiar with our XDR solution, Extended Detection and Response, you know that all the alerts from all the different Defender products such as Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps, and so on, are all propagated into incidents or into the extended detection and response platform. And the intelligence of all products work together in order to provide a better experience. So the extended detection and response platform is focused on post-breach scenarios and gathers the intelligence from all the different Defender workloads. Here with exposure management, we're trying to do the same for pre-breach scenarios. So here under the exposure management platform, all of the different Defender workloads contribute their initiatives, their security recommendations, and so on, and also the attack path, which I will cover later in this presentation. So here I will dive into the SaaS security initiative, which includes all the security recommendations that are related to improving the posture of your SaaS applications to make it harder for attackers to break in or log in into your business critical SaaS applications. As a side note, we have the CIS M365 Foundation's benchmark right next to it, which is another initiative that we, when I say we, I mean Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, have onboarded to the exposure management platform, and is a subset of the SaaS security initiative, which includes only the recommendations that are recommended by the CIS benchmark, by the CIS community for properly configuring your M365 services. And also the one next to it, the Zero Trust initiative. I wish to provide a quick overview on that. So this is an horizontal initiative. And when I say horizontal, it means this initiative includes recommendations from all the different workloads, Defender workloads, that are related to Zero Trust. So we, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, have few recommendations there and some other workloads, and it's using the benefits of having it all. But today we will dive deeper into the SaaS security initiative, but all the logic also applies to different initiatives. So or most of the logic at least. So let's dive in. When I click on the SaaS security initiative, I have this side pane, and it's recommended to open the initiative page. By clicking on that, you can see an overview of what this initiative focuses on and what it consists and so on. It has the score. The scores means how it's 35% out of possible 100%. What's your SaaS security posture situation at the moment? And I'll double click on that a little bit later. And we have the security recommendations tab, which I want to get into. So by clicking on that, I'm redirected to the security recommendations tab. And on the far right, there is a filter tab that I already clicked. And here I choose to focus on Salesforce. So I wish to see all the security recommendations that Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps provide and recommend to configure Salesforce. And by clicking apply, I see a good overview of the posture situation of Salesforce. Actually, we cover slightly more recommendations than what you can see here. So in the real live portal, you can scroll down. But this provides a very good understanding of your posture situation. And the recommended approach is to start with the highest impact non-compliant recommendation. At the moment, it's enforced login IP ranges on every request. Opening that recommendation and starts following the remediation step until this is compliant, and so on until everything is compliant. Or in case you don't wish to follow some of the recommendations, or in case you wish to, or in case you overruled it by a different provider or something like that, you can also mark you can also mark to ignore these specific recommendations or things like this. So these are the type of granularities that the exposure management platform allows as well. And now, so the Salesforce view that I just displayed, or Teams or so on, this is aimed for a persona which is focused on the health of a specific application. For example, if you have in your organization someone that manages Salesforce, So it's recommended for him to work from this page, and you can also export all of it for him in case he doesn't have access. But here in the SaaS security initiative, we focus on a persona that is in charge of the entire health of all the SaaS security in the organization. And for that, we have created the security matrices. We've basically categorized the 183 SaaS security posture recommendations into 12 measurable matrices that help you prioritize and manage the mass amount of recommendations that we provide. And here, just for an example, let's look at the missing best practices to secure privilege access in SaaS apps. This will include 9 different recommendations from different SaaS providers that are related to privilege access in SaaS apps. And since this is a very important topic, the weight of this metric is high, and it's recommended to tackle the high weight metrics first in order to improve the entire score of the SaaS security posture. And here I chose to focus and to double click on the missing best practices to manage applications that interact with other applications using oAuth protocol. So here we see 4 different recommendations related to this topic. And one of them is ensure third-party integrated applications are not allowed. Just by following the instructions of this recommendation, you can significantly decrease the risk from improper OAuth interaction. And again, you follow these remediation steps, and we check every few hours that you follow it correctly, and this should be the status of this recommendation should turn to compliant after a few hours. And then it's recommended to also mark this initiative as favorite and set your target goal. For example, you can set a target goal to 80%. And by doing that and then following the best practices to improve your SaaS security overall score that I just provided, you should aim to get to the target score that you set. From that moment, the recommended approach is to not keep entering the SaaS security initiative all over again because it's all set. Now you should only track changes from the exposure management overview tab, which includes a timeline for key initiatives that you track, and also includes security events if something deteriorates. So if a specific metric or if a specific initiative, the score of it drops, then you will see it in a kind of notification in the either the event tab under exposure insights or in the overview of exposure management itself. So this is the end of the SaaS security initiative demo. I provided here a few links for you, and my colleagues can share it later. So the SaaS security initiative public documentation also slightly repeats the best practices of how to work with the SaaS initiative as I just provided. And here you can see a list of supported applications that support SSPM, and you can learn from the SaaS security initiative which recommendations are supported. Now, I wish to move on to the concept of transitioning from classic posture management to reducing exposure to critical asset. And for that, I wish to recap on what is classic posture management. So, or at least what I call classic posture management. When I say that, I mean those best practices that are applicable for every organization. For example, enforcing strong password or enforcing MFA, it's true for every organization. I would recommend anyone to follow these best practices. But when we talk about exposure reduction to those crown jewels of the organization, each organization will see different attack path in their environment, tailored to their environment, based on these crown jewels that are defined, and I will expand on that soon. But first, I wish to again use the analogy of a house for that to describe like the notion of how it works. So assume an attacker in figure number 1 wish to break into your house, and assuming the door of the house is open. So that's a vulnerability, so-called. It's very easy for an attacker to break into the house. But just by breaking into the house, maybe there is nothing for him to do there because he cannot cause real damage if he only enters the living room and there is no critical assets there or something like that. But then it happens that on the table of the living room, there is a key to a very special room, which includes a computer, which has all the passwords to all the safes, and the attacker was able to break into the safe, which includes the crown jewels of the organization. So this is an attack path. An attacker has a vulnerable entry point. He can laterally walk in within your organization or within your house and get to the crown jewels. Let's use an example of like a real life example, assuming you have a vulnerable user in your environment, and this user by itself is not an admin or something like that. So you wouldn't pay extra attention on this user. And this user is misconfigured and is an easy entry point for an attacker. An attacker was able to break into this user and steal his credentials. And now this user happens to be the owner of an oAuth application that got consented by an Exchange Online admin, and it has directory.read-write-all access. So now, this oAuth application, which is the most critical asset of your organization that you are trying to protect, because this oAuth application or service principal, so-called, it has those permissions, the most sensitive permissions in your organization. And by that, an attacker can move laterally within your organization and get a hold of these critical assets. And this is what we are covering as part of the attack path feature. And as a reminder, this is still in a public preview. So I'll dive into the demo of the attack path. So here, under exposure management, we see under attack surface. So before, the initiatives that I described were under exposure insights. So right above it, under the attack surface, we see the attack path. And here, under the attack path tab, we see all the attack paths that exist in this demo tenant environment. Here we see 18 different paths. It means there are a few vulnerable entry points that allows lateral movement to critical resources. And now I will explain a little bit about the critical assets in your organization. So first, our research team, which are experts in how real attacks happens, they investigate and they predefine a set of permissions or assets and so on that are predefined as critical assets. So attack path, as long as you are licensed as long as you have E5 security license or the proper license, attack path starts being generated just by that, because we have a predefined set of critical assets, and the system just finds how an attacker can get into the organization and move laterally to get to your critical assets. And then you are also able to define your own critical assets, and by doing that, it will increase the amount of attack path that you see. So this is customizable under the XDR setting and in the XDR and in the critical asset management. And now, in order to focus on the SaaS security, on the attack path leading to SaaS, we will filter by target type AAD service principal. So here you can see all these attack paths that leads to a service principal with sensitive permissions. The service principal is a representation of the oAuth application that has those service principal. Okay, so here we see a device with high severity vulnerability, basically an easy entry point to an organization, allows lateral movement to this service principal. We will soon understand why it allows this lateral movement. And each attack path is also equipped with recommendations. So here you would have recommendations to remediate those vulnerabilities, or maybe to remove disable the oAuth applications or so on. So these posture management recommendations that we saw before. Some of them are directed to specific entities. And if these entities are part of the attack path, you will see these recommendations here as well. So now I continue. And if you wish to investigate this attack path, it's recommended to use the viewing map UI in order to better view it. So here, by pressing on that, the attack surface map is opened with this specific attack path. So here I see this vulnerable device, and if I click on it, I can see all the properties of this device and the metadata. And this specific device has credential off. If I click on this specific edge, and I will soon show an example. So this has credential of this user, and therefore the attacker can move laterally within the organization, and so on. This user is the owner of this oAuth application, and so on. You can also expand by clicking the plus sign and further explore all the relationships of this user with its surrounding and so on. And now I wish to share an example of a specific user I decided to double click on. So this Joe Dane was part of an attack path that I saw before, and I wanted to expand the investigation. So here I click the plus sign, and I see this Joe Dane as roles on this oAuth application. And by clicking on the edge, I can also see that the role that he has is owner of. So he's the owner of this oAuth application. And then this oAuth application can authenticate as this service principal, which apparently has critical privileges into your SaaS environment. Therefore, the attack path was generated. And this service principal can also impersonate as this user, so he can, so this can cause real damage. And this is a very beautiful way of understanding all the connections to the environment. And now I continue to a slightly different topic called choke points. So choke points are the next tab after the attack path. And for some organizations, they just have too many attack paths to handle, and it might be fine. So the goal of an organization is not necessarily to decrease the amount of attack path to zero. Attack path exists. It's always a game between productivity to security. And you should have a certain amount of attack path because you want to run the business properly. And we see for some organizations, large organizations, they have hundreds of thousands of attack paths. For such organizations, it's not recommended to go ahead and start looking at each one of the attack path, but to leverage the choke point experience. Here we see a specific device that is involved in 13 different attack paths. In some large environments, I saw specific asset that is involved in 100,000 attack paths. So the recommended approach is to view blast radius. Here you can open the attack surface map on this specific asset, and to keep exploring it, understanding all the relationship, understanding why it is involved in so many attack paths, and if it's an unnecessary exposure to organization, or it should be there. And if you decide there are some unnecessary exposures, then you better follow the least privilege guidelines and remove some of its privileges or disable some of its connections and so on. And this also leads me to another topic, which is how to further investigate the oAuth application's permissions and so on. So in case one of your leading choke point is an oAuth application, or in case you want to understand what is the permissions of a specific oAuth application that was the critical asset, you can always find this information in the exposure management platform, but you can also leverage the application inventory under assets. Here on the left side, you have applications, and the oAuth tab includes all of these. So here you have some predefined filters as well to look for overprivileged apps and so on. And you can search for a specific app name that you previously saw as part of the that was involved in some of the attack paths. So here I chose this application that was the OAuth app in the attack path that I investigated before. And I want to look at its permissions. Maybe it has some unused permissions that were not used for over 90 days, and I don't want them to be available. And then I will go to Enter ID and remove some of them, or maybe I just want to disable the app directly from here. It's also possible. So this is just another comfortable UI to help you manage your OAuth applications in case you wish. And then lastly, I want to touch the last part of the puzzle, I would say, which is, we call it exposure hunting. So I guess a big portion of this forum is familiar with advanced hunting. Advanced hunting is a query language that allows you to search and flexible access to data, enables unconstrained hunting for both known and potential threats. And lately, we see that many customers, so the original purpose of advanced hunting was mainly focused on post-breach scenarios. But lately, we see that many customers, because they're already familiar with the KQL language and so on, they also like to do some proactive exposure hunting. So we have onboarded all the data that is available in the application inventory OAuth tab into, or most of the data, sorry, into the advanced hunting OAuth app info table, and also the entire relationships and the attack path, the edges and the nodes and everything that I just showed in the attack surface map and the attack path is available in advanced hunting as well. This allows you to proactively search, for example, for all the owners of all the high privilege OAuth applications that have unverified publishers, for example, or many different combinations that you wish to run in your environment. It allows this granularity. So now I'm done with the exposure management demo. Again, I provided here some links to documentations or to relevant blogs that are related to this subject. And I want to move on to a conclusion and to just touch two key takeaways that I encourage you to take from this session. So first is the shift left mindset is critical than ever. Shift left is just a quick recap, rather than focusing, rather than getting alerts and react upon something that happened. Shift left means proactively configure your environment in order to prevent such attacks from to start with from happening. And with the era of AI and non-human identities and all of that, just the shift left mindset is more important than ever. And if I want you to take something from this lecture to remember, is this important key takeaway. And another one is that often you're overwhelmed with the amount of security recommendations that exist in your environment and so on. So you are encouraged to use the tools to focus on protecting your crown jewels, those critical assets that attackers are after. Those are the ones that you should focus on and protect. And this is, I think, the attack path feature helps you do that. This is it. And thank you for, yes.
Thank you so much, Itai. And we have just one question that's unanswered so far. So while we cover that, maybe some other questions will come into the queue. But the remaining one is, why do I not see attack paths info? I only see the other two exposure KQL tables. So I assume that was in reference to one of...
That's actually a really good comment that I wrote myself and apparently missed, is that attack paths are generated only if there is a real attack path in your environment. So only if there is an actual vulnerability, an actual exposure. For example, a vulnerable entry point that allows lateral movement to your crown jewels. If you don't have it, you just don't have it. And it's public preview as well. So as long as you're in the entitled to this feature, you are supposed to end your environment as those vulnerabilities. And it's also clearly written in the public documentation.
Great, thank you so much. We don't have any remaining questions in the queue, so we can go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, Itai, for being our guest today and for sharing such great information with our community. Also, thank you to the Q&A team behind the scenes who helped to answer questions along the way. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desires to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/securitycommunity. This is also where you'll be notified about upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. For those of you who may have additional questions on today's topic or other product-related questions, please raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/mda_community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.